We're on
Okay.
recording. Just warning you.
All right. Okay.
Thank you for subscribing to ESS BIZTOOLS
Mm-hmm.
whole package. Can you tell me a little bit about Quantify Accounting Solutions, please? Just while I'm.
Well, at the moment it's just me.
Hmm.
Yeah, tax agent, but I also do like the bookkeeping and everything for small business.
Right, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
hmm
So let
And I'm
me.
doing a new website at the moment. And
I just
my
had a look
idea
at it, I
was
think.
to, oh, that's my old one.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. My new one, I want to have a login area for clients.
Yep. Okay.
And my idea was to have some of these information and tools for clients.
Yeah, that's okay. You can do that as long as it's a secure area.
Yes.
Yeah. So
hmm
it's
Yeah, it has to be
only.
somewhere that they log into. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
what
hmm
some firms are doing in that area, they've got access to tax file numbers and all sorts of things the clients can get, and also to
Ah,
make
right.
appointments with you is a very popular
Right.
area. So if they get out of bed at 3 a.m. and they want to, they're thinking about their accountant, they can book an appointment rather than ringing you at 3 a.m.
Right.
Um,
Mm, yeah.
so
So other firms do that. They put some of your tools and information in a login area.
yeah, we I must
Yeah.
admit we haven't had anyone talking to us about that for about 2 years. But prior to that, we had a real run on it. That's why we
Mm,
changed some things around so that that could occur.
all right.
And
Mm,
we tell everyone, of course, the license says you can do that. So um,
mm,
some of them are definitely doing it. Just depends how committed firms are to really being a one-stop business advisory service for their clients. I think it's a great idea,
mm,
and you can put other information. Depends your industry specialities and what other information you might have. So in Toowoomba, if you've got things on the grain industry or the cattle industry or um, uh, what else you got out there, sorghum, um, you can have that there so that clients can
mm-hmm,
find some additional information. So
mm-hmm.
what?
Okay.
So it's only you. What have you? So you're starting fresh. You didn't buy any clients. You're starting fresh to gain clients, eh?
I've been in business for 7 years. I bought a very small uh, package of clients from my ex-boss, and yeah, I've built it up quite a bit since then.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
Uh,
hmm
right.
So
Okay.
I'm
So
looking at the next phase now. I want to sort of grow it some more now.
yeah. So what would be the key industries your clients are from?
Primary producers, I suppose,
Okay.
um, and quite a few cafes and a few retail. hmm
Okay. Right. Okay.
Mm.
What do you want to achieve from your subscription with ESS BizTools?
Well, as much as I can. As I said, I want to offer this as I'm doing up like packages, and um, one of the benefits of subscribing to a package will be access to this info.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so I just wanted to get some tips and tricks from you to get the most out of my
Okay.
subscription.
Yep. That's the whole idea of this webinar now. Access to
hmm
material. Are you intending to run seminars, webinars?
Um, Perhaps.
Right.
I'm not a great public speaker, but I'm trying to learn.
Yeah, I would suggest you practice because it's
Yes.
I think for well, I think it's always been there for accountants that the necessity to be able to speak in public confidently, but
Mm,
it's more so
mm,
now. And now that we've got tools like what we're talking to you with now, or Skype, and some of the
mm.
others, you can communicate. And where you are in Toowoomba, of course, I assume you've got clients all over the place. And
I do, all over Australia virtual.
yeah. So you can quite easily just get on and run a webinar for them and be very confident in how you're going to do it, or use Skype, of course, to talk to them.
So, in saying that, can you use your packages like on a webinar? Would
Yes.
that work?
Yep. I'm going to show you that in a moment. I'm going to show you that in a moment, because really that's what I'm doing here now. But we've got pre-prepared material for you to use. But you could literally be on our site now as a subscriber and be showing it going through and using it to illustrate matters to your clients. You can do that. It's a tool for you to use to help you deliver business advisory services. And there's probably some uses of it that I haven't even thought of, but I think that's one of them. Yeah, and it's legitimate. I see myself as a writer of material to help hundreds of accountants around Australia deliver more advisory services. I'm not worried about taxation. There's a little bit of tax material, but you know that. And
yes, I am trying to move into advisory more so.
How much advisory work are you doing at present?
Zilch.
Oh, okay.
Nothing. Right. Yeah.
Okay, well, this is...
nothing that I get paid for anyway.
Okay. This is a brave move, what you've done, so congratulations on that. I only wish more accountants would do it, because I really believe that the future of the accountancy profession in public accounting, chartered accountancy firms, is to become the chief financial officer for their clients. In inverted commas, there's obviously no one's going to be performing what a public company CFO does, or on very rare occasions. But I was one of those. I was a public company secretary and a CFO, not anymore, but I was earlier in my career. And that was the greatest education I had. I've worked with some interesting clients since I went into public practice and then into consultancy. But that 10 years or so in a public company, being at a fairly young age, through a resignation, a sacking and a death, I become the CFO in a listed public company, and it was really getting thrown to the wolves, I tell you. And in a public company that had been a public company for 50 years, and I produced the first budget. So that were the challenges I got. Because I remember saying, has anyone prepared the budgets? We got any budgets? What are they? And anyhow, that's another story. But it was a great education. And whilst, and what I keep on saying to accountants, including my son, who's in public practice, I ranked a tax return as probably, I keep on saying, in the 80th item I had to worry about. It definitely wasn't the priority item, is what I'm trying to say. Not even the annual financial accounts. Now, obviously, we had an external auditor, and we didn't do anything else for a couple of weeks in about end of July to mid-August, because public company had your results out by early September. But the rest of that was the only time. So there was a hell of a concentration at that period on annual accounts, tax and putting it all together. I think I probably spent more time, though, writing the director's annual report, because obviously that was an important document. Right. And we had a director who was very fussy about those things, because he was on the ASX selection panel, or whatever they call it, for the best reports. We had to dot the I's and cross the T's 25 times at times. But it was... The things I found were, our liquidity situation, our inventory. We were in the meat export business. We were the second largest Australian meat group, and we had things going on all over the eastern states, anyhow. And your debtors level, what was going on overseas, especially in currencies, but also strikes in certain ports. But the CEOs or the other key members of the management teams, what if type questions. Pete, could we do this? Could we do that? Could we send meat that we're currently sending to Japan? Could we send it to Russia? Just, it's got to be different when it goes to Russia. It's got to be bone in, it's got to be frozen. And it's those sort of questions that I reckon I used to spend 3 to 4 hours a day answering. Now, I didn't answer them all, of course. I had a team of people, and I'd go back out to them and say to the costing guy, "You got to do this costing now." And he said, "What about the one I did last night?" I said, "That's all gone. The boss has changed his mind. Doesn't want to do that. We can't get enough money for it. We've asked the Americans, and they won't pay the price." Now, this is what used to go on every day. And is that any different in small business? Serious question.
Probably not. Every day something.
We had a management team with
something new is thrown at you.
Yeah, we had a cricket team. We had 11 key managers. I was one of them, but we had key people that the CEO could turn to, and say, can we do this? Can we do that? These types of things. What are your SME clients got, or your grazier farmer clients?
Me.
Yeah. And that's where you've got to perform the CFO role, I think. And that's I'm giving you this background so you understand where I'm coming from in when I try to write this material. Because I really believe that if a whole generation of accountants supply that type of energy and service to their clients, we will have an outstanding small, medium-sized business community in Australia, and therefore an outstanding accounting community, because your clients will grow, you will grow with them. It's why I've concentrated.
Yeah, my clients are probably what you'd refer to as micro clients, up to about $1 million turnover.
Yeah, but they'll grow.
Most of my clients.
Some of them will grow. Well, some of them will grow.
Yeah.
I consulted in 2001, when I thought the world was going to end, or some people did, after September 11, I took on I was offered a contract with Oz Industry, our consulting business. So after I got out of accounting, I'd done a bit of work on the COMET program. It was called Commercialising Emerging Technology. I'd been a consultant, and they wanted to put someone. I live in Townsville, so they wanted someone in Townsville. And I said, I thought about it. So after September 11, I thought anything's likely to happen in the world, so it might be a good idea to have a government contract. So I took on a government contract, which was an eye-opener to me about what happens in business, because we had to then work, and we did that for 11 years out of my consulting business, and that's when we wrote a lot of the ESS BIZTOOls material as well, which was based on that experience dealing with these people who developed in the main new technologies or services that wanted to commercialize it. Our role was to guide them through and get them competent consultants, whether they were marketing, sales, business planning type people. We weren't able to do any of the work, but then we had to review it and vet it and critique it. And at the end of it, though, I had to train them how to make investment presentations to be able to raise capital under Section 708 of the Corporations Act. When I see crowdsourced funding come along, I applaud it, because the sleepless nights I had in that 11 years trying to work out how I was going to get this client to make presentations, that was a real challenge at times, and then trying to figure how they could raise the capital that they wanted with only 20 investors, because that meant you were looking for a fair bit of money out of some investors. The biggest amount I got was $450,000 out of one investor. We were trying to raise 1.3 million, and he put in 450,000. That made the mathematics a bit easier on the rest of them, because you could only get 20 investors. I think we ended up with 18 in that particular case. But some of those clients, when I started with them, were startups. They were brand new. Now, the most successful one is Mackay business. It's today got 45 staff and is going along at a million miles per hour. Now and again, they say we've got to slow down. And they originally invented a microwave processor to measure moisture on coal on conveyor belts. So they were consultants to the coal industry, and they understood the coal industry, and the coal companies and the port authorities were having lots of problems with dust on coal. That gets complaints from the neighbours, from the people on and they developed this process. Now, that process is now being used in food manufacture, in cheese manufacture, in pasta manufacture, and about 10 other things that I can't even remember. And so that grew out of a company that when I first met them had no turnover. It was brand new. and the turnover is now up around $12-14 million. So these companies can grow. They have a CFO. Now they're big enough now to employ a CFO, or a person they call a CFO, and she's a young lady and qualified accountant. She does a reasonable job. They get a bit of support now and again. I give a bit of support, and a couple of other accountants in Mackay give a bit of support to her. But they run their show, so clients can grow and end up very good businesses. Crowdsource funding is going to give a whole generation of businesses the opportunity of doing that. That's what I'm excited about. I think it's the biggest change, the biggest change for SMEs in 35 years. 35 years ago, Section 708 got introduced to the Act. There was nothing before then. The only way you could raise capital before then was to go around and talk to a couple of friends and family and get them to come together.
Yes.
You couldn't promote it. It was illegal. I know people did, but that was illegal. You couldn't promote it. You couldn't publicise in any shape or form. We had 708. Keating first brought it in, then Howard amended it, both as treasurers, and then we've now got, I think, very good legislation there. But now we've got the crowdsource funding. They can raise up to $5 million in a 12-month period and do it again next year if the market will support them. Right. So there's a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, I don't know if my clients would ever sort of look into that, but like the accounting involved around that, I'm just a sole trader, that's probably for a bigger accounting firm.
If you get clients like that you want to service, we do offer consulting services through our consulting business, which is called Towers Business Development. Some of our clients have taken us up on that at various times. So if you've got someone and you don't want to send them to your rival down the road in Toowoomba, you can come to us, and I'll give you an opinion. We'll give an hour free to the client to talk things through, and then we could. What we can do is some sort of joint venture on a project. The benefit I hope that you would get out of that is you'd see how I would approach it, and you might say, okay, that'll suit me.
Yes.
You might get me to do one more, or maybe a couple more, but after that you're on your own. You could say, I'm on my own now, thanks, Pete. I understand how to do this, and that's part of the. But it is an extra cash contribution, but that should be coming from the client in that you're then giving them a service. Right. So I wouldn't be shy on anything that we've got on ESS BIZTOOLS as far as you delivering it, because we can give you that support, or I can arrange for other people to give you support who will not be your direct competitors. They'll be in another area, and all
right. Interesting.
Just don't say no to a client, and because the real problem with crowdsource funding, I think, for some smaller accountants, and there's a few thousand of those, is if they say no to a client or show no interest in a new phenomenon like crowdsource funding, they might lose the client. I think they'll lose the client as far as crowdsource funding is concerned, but they're likely then to lose the accounting and tax work, because that will then be poached to go to somewhere else. The terminology I've used on all this is your opportunity to grow with your client. Your client knows nothing about doing any of this unless they happen to have been a public company, something or other, director or CFO or something. They've got no idea how this process is going to work. And a lot of accountants don't either at this stage. But by going through it and working with the client, and you might have to decide what you're going to charge for and what you're not going to charge for in that first few clients, and you get the knack of it. But then once you've done that, you're underway. And you can confidently do the work.
Yeah, it's certainly very interesting.
Okay, what have you had? Have you been through the site yet at all?
I've just had a brief look at the individual product packages just to see what they are virtually. Okay, you've had a look at some. So okay. So I'll just give you the overview, if that's okay. And under our agreement, we'll do a few of these with you, these mentoring sessions, and because we want you to understand how we think you should be using this product. Because obviously we want you to subscribe again next year and the year after and so on. Correct.
But that'll only work if there's a dialogue. And if you think I'm wrong, you tell me. I've got a thick hide. If you think we should have other material in the system, please tell us. Because a lot of what we've got in this system has come from suggestions. People have rung me up, sometimes in a hell of a hurry. In 2 hours' time, which is a phone call I got one afternoon from Perth. I got someone coming in, and I'd like to show him this and that and that. And out of that came our one of our packages that I'll show you in a moment. So, okay, let's go to the beginning, I suppose. This is where we started in sections and papers. We originally just produced some material. And there is 580 odd papers in the system. Now, they've been written targeted at an SME type audience. They're not written as accountancy textbooks, although most of our subscribers, if they've got staff, utilize this area for staff training. But there's 68 sections. So the the numbers reserved for SMEs is 001 to 499. Okay. So we've used 68 of them. I don't know if we ever used the full 500, the full 499, but they're there reserved. So they're what I'm just going through at present. The ones that are numbered in the 500s are for you. They're for accountants. So what happens when you click on to a heading, you then get the articles that are contained therein. So if you want to look at fixed price agreements, you just click onto it. Okay. There's a brief summary of what fixed price agreements are all about. There's the paper, but there's also a couple of other things, a template of a letter and a template of an agreement that you might want to use, or you might want to get your solicitor to prepare one. So if you want to view that article, you just click on the name of it, and over here you bring it up. And this is the document. This is the same methodology of how these papers are prepared for the ones that are able to go to your clients as well. But they've all got this double line. Above there's your space to badge it, put a logo, whatever you want to do. You wouldn't do that on this one because this is targeted at you as an accountant. And I'll send that to one of our clients. Did send some of these one day to a client. I said, I wouldn't recommend that, mate. That was not. I told you not to. But there's the document, which you can go through and read and say, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to try to get some fixed price agreements. Have you got any of these? This is where you say to the client, I'm going to charge you 10 grand a year or 12 grand a year, and you pay me $1,000 a month, and you do a record.
That's what I'm moving into.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So there's an article there that might help you in that deliberation. And what is there with every paper is a PowerPoint slide.
Oh, yeah.
Because when we originally wrote all this, we were gearing towards running seminars, because that's what we were doing, my firm. We had a real reason to run a whole series of seminars. We ran seminars for 30...
For accountants?
No, for SMEs. We did a bad merger, to be honest. We merged with a firm and we didn't conduct the due diligence enough. And one of them was an insolvency practitioner, and whilst I knew that, I didn't realise that 80% of the work was coming from his efforts in that firm, a two-partner firm. And then he told us at the 11th hour he wanted to leave. He was going to go and live in another city. We probably should have walked away from the deal, but we didn't, because none of the other, myself and my other, what were then two other partners, did not want to do insolvency. So we then had to say, we're going to lose all this insolvency work. We had a 12-month rundown on the insolvency work, and the guy cooperated and come back and signed off. And this is back in the 80s. It was easy to become an insolvency practitioner then. As long as you were a registered auditor, you could become an insolvency practitioner. And so one of my original partner, he did that. But we knew we had to replace it. And we'd been going twice, I think, at that stage to FMRC at the University of New England at Armidale, and a guy called Andrew Geddes, who you may have heard of, and they were the gurus on management information for accountants, and really were preaching that accountants had to do more than just do the accounts and tax returns. Exactly what I'm now saying today. Geddes is still around. He's in semi-retirement on the Sunshine Coast. I was with him in Sydney late November at a workshop he ran. So we tried to base a lot of these things on what they were saying and what they were encouraging accountants to do. So, and part of that was to run seminars to educate the client. So what you've got is a set of PowerPoint slides. Now on these PowerPoint slides, you can put your logo on there if you wish, and you're able to get underway. We've also got in here some leadership material. Now this is written by a separate consultant, a guy called Peter McDougall, who was a colonel in the army, and he's a mate of mine. And he was when he got out of the army, he was running leadership development courses for James Cook University, but also big government departments and the army and some big companies, mainly mining companies. And he was running courses in Indonesia and Vietnam and Laos and those sort of places. And I said to him one day, why don't you write a series for small businesses? So this is the result of that. So it's set out here. It's part of your material. And it's just a matter of clicking on. And so this is the participants follow-up. His material is slightly different because we just adapted what he was using in his own training, and he rewrote some of the material. So there's a set of PowerPoint slides the same way. There's articles. What some firms...
So where would you envisage me using that?
Well, in a single person firm, the best you could do is read it yourself and use it to develop your leadership skills, because leadership for you relates to your clients and your prospects. If you had some team members, I'd be saying sit down and use one module, say once a week or once a month with your team. Take about an hour, go through, discuss it, utilize it. What some of our subscribers have done, though, is after having done that, they've then talked to some of their clients about it, and they've actually been running leadership training for their clients based on this material.
Oh, really?
McDougall's very keen on all this. He's not a young man anymore, but he's still around. He lives in Townsville, and he does consult to some of our subscribers because his phone number's in his material here, and you can ring him and talk to him. And he has, as I said, done some consulting work all over the place when he's been away on other assignments in the main. But that's in there. It's part of what you've got, and you can use it. And my suggestion is you should start at the beginning, not halfway through it like I just did, and just work your way through it and read it and think about it.
Okay.
And because leadership's very important. I just indicated I went to a workshop with Andrew Geddes, and the other key presenter was Glenn Richards from Green Cross Vets, the public company.
Vets,
And Geddes had been the chair of that company for 11 years, so they worked as a team together. And leadership was a big area that they talked about, developing the leadership skills of your team. So this is very important for you when you're thinking about your clients. Encouraging, not all your clients are going to want to grow, but some will. If you can be there as a person encouraging them. So there's no reason why you couldn't put some of this material together and then progressively make it available to clients, sit down and discuss it with them after you've done it yourself. You've got to be the teacher in all this. You've got to be the leader. Therefore, you've got to read it yourself first. Okay, so now if we go back to what I did skip over was the material for clients in effect. It looks exactly the same as everything else. So if we wanted to have a look at operating when I mean everything else, the same as what's in the accountants area. So you've got the list of what's in there. and you might just pick an article, checklist of KPIs that might be suitable. You've got the summary, and then you get the paper, and then you get the PowerPoint slides.
Mm-hmm.
My suggestion is start having a look at that, especially the ones that relate to people starting a business, because they're beginning in business. We do have bookkeeping. We've kept bookkeeping in the system because some people still want bookkeeping, and I think bookkeeping still is a very important area, even with all the computers. Because at times I think some people using computers don't understand what the basics are to some of these.
No, they don't.
So we've got all that.
So I could make some of these available on my website.
Oh yeah, if you put your name.
Would you? Yeah. So would I just put the paper and the PowerPoint up, or
I'd only put the paper. I'd only put the paper up.
Right.
That's up to you, but I'd only put the paper up. We basically develop PowerPoint slides for seminars and webinar, and ultimately then they become used in webinars. But I don't think I'd be giving them the PowerPoint slides. Where the PowerPoint slides can come in handy is what some firms use them for, is their own staff training, and also for younger, inexperienced accountants who might be given the task of talking to someone that's about to start a business or thinking about starting a business. Use it as a guide to keep them on track, to not let some old fuddy-duddy who thinks he knows it all get them off track. So they can keep on coming back on what the purpose of the discussion is. And that might be in understanding business entities, for argument's sake. So we've got a fair bit of material there on business entities so that they can, and they've obviously all got the material there within them. Okay, so obviously you can go through and look at them and work out what you want to use. The next area I want to go to is seminars, because we've talked about seminars a couple of times. Now, with each of these product packages, there's a tutorial, like a video or a webinar that accompanies them. So that's our attempt to give you a couple of different viewpoints, if you like. They're always my viewpoints, or most of them are, but done in different ways, if I can put it that way. So we download the content. And what we got in seminars, there are 35 seminars. There's a few more to go into the system. There's a whole stack of organisation material. This is if you are going to run seminars. I've run probably a few thousand seminars and or webinars these days. So there's material there you can go through and look at and decide whether you're going to use it. There is what we call a general hints on the presentation of a seminar. And I've got on my list to write a similar document on a webinar, because they are different. But a lot of the material can be. Have you done the webinar one yet? No, but it's on my list. I'll probably get that done next week, because we use webinars all the time, and now I think about it, I keep on saying. So, and that's because when we look at here, obviously this is a little bit different. You don't have a lectern in a webinar, but you're doing I think it's a good idea in a seminar. So that's for firms that are regularly presenting. Or even if you're hiring a room and going into it, and they've got a lectern, just take a little sign so you can affix your name to it, so that because these are marketing exercises. Always have business cards. Always. So and one of the big ones is number 5. Don't just stand up and read the paper to them. I think a seminar's the idea is to have a conversation with the clients. Try and find out what's of interest to them. What's concerning them. Whilst we've got the paper, you're going to see that in a minute in the package, they can read that when they go home. They don't have to sit there and listen to you read it to them. Maybe you might read some key points out, but in the main, try to have a conversation. What you're trying to do on a seminar, I think, is communicate to the client that you understand what you're talking about. Because the client sitting there, or the person in the seminar who might not be a client, or even if they are a client, they might currently be paying you, I don't know, $1,000, $2,000 a year to just do basic work for their business. Well, I think your aim should be to get that client up to a $6,000 or $7,000 client. Now, how you're going to do that is, I think you need to be able to communicate to them to convince them that they should be looking at things like their key performance indicators in their business. They should be getting at least quarterly financial accounts done. You probably should be preparing a budget and a cash flow forecast for them. And that will add up to a fee of $6 or $7 grand. But in the first place, I think you've got to justify to them why they need all this.
Yes.
That's the benefit of a seminar.
That's the thing. Yeah, right.
Okay, so let's move on. Now, in the seminar material, just excuse me, Evelyn, that's that guy in Perth. I've just been waiting for a call from Perth there. That's him. Just tell me we can do it at 5:30. Where am I? Oh, yeah, that's all that. I got into grants now. I'm getting. Okay, let me.
I haven't even looked at grants, to be honest.
No, I'm going to show you that in a minute, but I just want to get to the sections and papers. Yeah, grants are a great idea, I think. Right there, I didn't want to.
I just don't want to have to write them, that's all.
Okay, so when we go to the actual seminars that are pre-prepared, the original ones we did, which are these numbers up to 1,000, were tended to be for longer periods than what our current preference is, but that's up to you. So this one here, it's talking about family businesses. That's 2 sessions of 3 hours. So obviously 6 hours was built into that. When we first started doing seminars, people would turn up for 3 hours. We used to run them 7 p.m. to 10 p.m., 3 nights a week, and they would turn up. But I then found that 1 hour seminars are far more attractive to the public these days. They've seem to have less time. So they're the ones that are numbered from 1,000 onwards. Okay, so if you want to see what's in a seminar, we might go to this one, characteristics of a well-run business. And you've got a summary, what it's about. You've got that organisational material, so I won't go back into there, but what we have then in here is the characteristics of a well-run business. There's the paper, the PowerPoint slides, and then a couple of other. Oh, sorry, there's two slides in here. So all we do is click on to the paper.
Lots of rain up there, I believe.
It's not pouring at present, but it has been all day. But they even had a cyclone alarm went over the radio a couple of hours ago, I'm told, and that was for so they could give a warning to a particular area, a little bit north of Townsville, part of Townsville, where there's 2 rivers and apparently
only it would come down here.
Yeah, everyone tells me that. I've spoken to 3 or 4 people down south today, and they've all said the same thing.
Right.
So what we've got here is obviously they get the paper. This one's on characteristics of a well-run business. Actually, I think this is our best paper because it really tries to encompass a whole range of services that you could then offer that client. And what it's trying to do is to provoke discussion. The client says, well, how do we line up on our customer service? All these papers are linked, so you just click onto there and that will take you to that other paper, and then you can come back to this one.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the whole idea there. You get the paper, you've got various links, and this is what you would hand the client for attending the seminar. And then we have the PowerPoint slides. So it's the PowerPoint slides that's really going to drive what you're going to be presenting in the seminar. In talking to the issues, what I have omitted just to show you, within that generic material, there is a timetable. So each seminar has got a timetable of how we think you should present it. And I'll go back and show you that in a moment. So you get so this is the PowerPoint slides for this. You use this just to drive you through discussing with the client or the attendees what the issues are. So we years ago, we were getting attendances of around 40 people. Biggest one was our one-day seminar where we had about 500 at a school assembly hall we booked. But I think seminars are a great, and I'll just change that, a great tool to talk to people. And what you can then use is these PowerPoint slides will work just as easy on a webinar. As you can see, hope they're coming through to you loud and clear down there, so you can see them.
Yes.
That can be done with your clients.
Right.
Some of them are set up that you can pull up one line at a time. For the speed in this, we've just got it set that it's coming up all together, each item. But if you're actually doing it, you'd probably pick up one item at a time.
Yep. Okay.
So that's the that's really. Oh no, I want to show you that organizational material. I'll just go back to that in the seminar organizational material. So I showed you the overall material. This has now been in some respects featured now to suit this particular business. So we've gone through and done this. So this is the timetable for presenting this type of.
Right.
So this is the characteristics of a well-run seminar. We're doing this so you can set the time. Whether you want to start it at 5:30, well, we're saying give yourself 5 minutes to do a bit of an introduction, tell people who you are, show them where the bathrooms are, and tell them there's coffee up the back they can look at. And then we had another paper there, which was just the steps needed to achieve business success. That really was only going to take 5 minutes, and then 45 minutes on that main subject, characteristics of a well-run business. Always allow questions at the end, and that's the seminar. Now, what you might have then is some tea and coffee or some drinks if you want to have drinks. And but if you started at 5:30, it can be basically the presentation's finished at 6:30. You've probably got rid of everyone by 7 o'clock. If that's what you want to do, if they want to stand around and talk and you think there's going to be some business out of it, you might let it go a bit longer. But that's the benefit of a seminar. These days, of course, webinars, which are basically the same, but you can talk to people over a lot bigger distance. And even some of our subscribers now in markets like Sydney and Melbourne are using webinars rather than seminars because they've got clients. They might be operating out of Parramatta, but they've got people over in Hornsby. They've got people down in Cronulla. It's amazing where clients are located. Oh, they might have a client in Brisbane. And I've noticed a lot of accountants in the south have always got clients in Cairns or Port Douglas. I don't know why that occurs. And they've got to go and visit them every year, I've noticed.
Oh, right. That might be why.
Get the annual tax trip. And they're not going to inspect the property, so the tax man really can't win.
Exactly.
So that's looking at a seminar. Okay?
Yep.
And there's a whole list of seminars that are there, and if you've got any questions or comments on that, please give me a ring. Client mentoring and coaching is one of the other modules. Now, this one was prepared on the basis of one of our subscribers contacting me one day and saying, help, I've been trying to get a major business client in Perth for 5 years. He's coming to see me in 2 hours. I said, oh, thanks for the notice. And he said, I've just remembered. And he said, I want to hand him some of your material. Now, this was 10 years ago. We didn't have as much as what we got today. What should I give him? So I wrapped off about 6 or 7 papers. And he said, that's great. He said, can I make a suggestion? How about you put it into some sort of product package so that next week when I might have someone who's going to be a new client, new business, talking about buying one, I don't have to ring you again. So that's what we developed this as. So there's the 12 module headings. And then what we've done with that, we've got, okay, someone's purchasing or commencing a business. And I'm going to go into a bit more of my philosophy now. I think accountants have got to educate our clients on the services you can do, because a lot of SMEs assume that their client is only interested in doing annual accounts and tax work and maybe financial planning. So unless the accountant has communicated, unless you have communicated to your clients that you are interested in doing advisory work, and you told me before this is a new venture for you, so you're going to have to communicate to your clients that you're interested. One of my suggestions to you is you start using this material. We have put it into series, for want of a name. We ran out of names in here because otherwise it gets very complicated. There's thousands of forms in this system, and that's why we've got numbers on them, so we call these series. So our concept is that you will send, you've interviewed today someone who's thinking about purchasing or commencing a business. I think your objective should be unashamedly to generate that client into a $6,000 to $10,000 a year client. Now, the average fee in Australia, according to benchmarking.com, is around $3,800 to $4,000 per client. Now, I know that's an average, but there are some clients paying $50,000 to their accountants, even more. So the average at $3,800 is not very high, in my opinion, if you're supplying services. Now, if you don't,
just for compliance accounting work?
So I'm suggesting, the compliance work is there, and that might be the $3,000 or the $2,500 to $3,000 component. But how can we legitimately, ethically grow that fee? That's my question. Hopefully this will help you. So we say we're going to send the client some more information. And by this, we're indicating to the client, so let's go into series 1. And our suggestion is...
So you're talking about a series of emails like follow-up?
Yes. Now, some of our subscribers print all this up. So there's 5 series in this package. They print it up, put it into a binder and send it to the client. They can do that, but I don't like it because I think it's giving the client too much information at once. I don't think they'll read it and absorb it. Now, some people will. Some people will read a foot of paper if you send it to them, but not many, in my opinion. I think it's far better to go, but that's your choice. Some of our subscribers have actually got some nice binders printed, they've shown me, and they say to the client, we'll email this to you, you punch some holes in it and you file it in there, so you've got a permanent reference library for your team. Now, I think that's a good idea if you wanted to do that. So what we say in the first instance is there needs to be a letter or an email to the client telling them what you're doing. And obviously, like all of our material, you can edit it. So if they haven't, I'll get here, congratulations on your decision to purchase a business. You might say, congratulations, or I know you're considering buying a business. I thought this might help you. Something like that. We know many SME need management assistance. Well, everyone knows that. I think the key thing that you've got to be able to convey to them is that Carmel Summers can convey this information to them, can do far more work for them than what they perceive a taxation accountant does. Because a lot of SMEs know that some accountants do CFO type work, but a lot of them tell me it's not their own accountant. Yet I know some of those accountants at times, and I say, yes, they can. I know they can. Actually, they've got our material. And they say, oh, can they? Well, they never told me. Well, that's one of the reasons I'm emphasizing this. I think accountants have really got to be marketing. And you don't just market for one day and then forget about it for another 365 days. It's an ongoing event. You mightn't market every day, but I think every week there's got to be, in effect, something going out. You're creating some sort of interest in the community. So hopefully this is one way you might convince this person buying a business that you're able to deliver. So we're saying to him, we're going to send you a series of material. Now, some people charge for this. That's your decision. I think it's a marketing tool, to be honest. I'm saying to you, if you think this new client, because initially all you're going to get them to do is, or all you're going to get to do is the annual accounts and tax return, that might be a $2,000 client, maybe $3,000. What's it worth to you if we can get them, you can convince them that you can offer some services and they'll pay you $6,000 to $10,000. I think it's worthwhile you being a marketer to give them this material to convince them to go to that. Because once you've got them on that and your client, hopefully for 10 years or more, well, it's become a $60,000 fee rather than a 12, maybe $15,000 fee. And I know money's not everything, but it helps and it gives you some interesting work to do. I personally, people told me I was good at tax, but I really didn't like doing it. This was what I wanted always to do. That's why we started this. Not only to cover that work, I just knew, having gone from a public company, I wasn't going to sit there and do some of the preliminary work. But we always had teams around us, and you haven't got a team at this stage. I found it difficult to work without a team, to be honest. Okay, so there's some other material in here. Oh, then we got the survey form. I knew we missed it. This is an important document. So for every series, we've put a survey form in, and you need to badge the survey form above here. Put your name and your logo, your firm name, and then what we're saying to the client: please tell us what you thought of this material, which we're going to send you. And if you get any of them clicking 4 or 5, please send me an email. And I'm dead serious, because if they tell you it's not helpful, we want to know why. Now, it might be because the client's got a degree in accounting or corporate affairs, whatever it's called. I've forgotten now, commerce, and doesn't find it helpful. But if it's someone is starting a business and really doesn't understand any of this, but they can't understand what we've said about discretionary trusts, for argument's sake, well, I want to know, if you don't mind. Send me an email. You won't hurt my feelings, and say, "Hey, I've just had someone tell us they don't understand that stuff," because we've got to go back and revisit it, because we pride ourselves that we've written this so SMEs can understand. My chief secretary has been with me for over 25 years, I think, and we always say, "No, that's not it. That's Jenny." In fact, she's now living down at Gympie, which is another story. So we are really using technology to coordinate everything. She wanted to go down there to be near her grandkids. And now everyone's come out of a legal background, so she understands the legal side of things on a range of issues. But she's been here 4 years, and she does a lot of our government grant work. So we now what we suggest on the survey is that you would email this package out to the client, and a few days later pick up the phone, or if you had an offsite, I'd be suggesting to you, you delegate that. If you're on your own, Carmel, you're going to pick up the phone and say, did you get that material? Have you been able to read it yet? Have you got any questions? Because unashamedly, this is a marketing tool. And if they say to you, yeah, I've been reading all about discretionary trusts, I think I should have one of them. You never mentioned one of them the other day. So then you can talk to them and say, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. Or perhaps it's going to be more back up in some of these sorts of things. I'm going to do some research and development. Now, I notice in there I've got to be a company, but at this stage I'm only going to be a sole trader. That's the sort of, and that's one of the reasons it's there. And that's why I've linked companies and then R&D incentive. They're deliberately spaced together there to show the client that, and at times you need the client to tell you what they're going to do. I found over the years, some people will go off and do R&D and not tell anyone because they've read all the warnings that the patent attorneys give that you can't disclose things to anyone. But they don't tell anyone. They don't tell any of their advisors. They don't go and see a lawyer. They don't go and talk to their accountant. And then you find that I found 2 cases that a business had spent over $200,000 on research and development in about a 6-week gap between one and the other, and neither of them were operating as a company. And when I told them they were not going to get the tax rebate, they knew all about the tax rebate. They knew they were going to. One was a pretty wild Sicilian. I thought I would have to get into a fisty fight, and I hadn't been one of them for a long time. I calmed him down. I actually did an accountant at one stage. I ran into her at a conference, and I took her for a cup of coffee, and I said, I've been told the client, did you realise they did a whole stack of research and development? She said, no. And I said, well, why? And she said, I put them all to drawings. I said, what? It didn't get claimed anywhere. But I subsequently found out she had some doubts about that client. They were in a certain area in Australia which grows that funny stuff that people smoke, and I think she was a bit worried about some of the information. But I couldn't tell the client that's why she'd done it or hadn't done it. So you send this to them, and then you follow up, you get the feedback, and then the following week you send the next series, and so on.
Right.
Is that going to help you educate your clients that you can do more?
Yes.
There's nothing there about taxation. If there is, there's very little. And the only taxation is really the R&D tax incentive, because we want them to think. I really think you've got to be putting them on notice to say, now, if you ever start thinking about doing R&D, you need to come and talk to me, because we might have to restructure you so you get all the benefits.
That's right. Yeah. Right. Excellent.
Does that help?
Right. Yes, it does actually.
Because then what you would be doing, I didn't mean to go there. Don't know why I do that. I forget which way we've got to. I think I would have done this 1,000 times. I do it in my sleep, but every so often I click the wrong one. You need to be getting your clients to accept that you are able to do this more advanced work. And I hope that will help.
Good at conveying that. It will,
because you are educating them how you
Yes, someone told me that some bank did a survey about accountants and why the biggest reason clients leave their accountant, and they said that the client feels that they've outgrown their accountant, and possibly it's because they don't know what their accountant can do.
Yeah, but and I'm not having a go at you, but I am an accountant, so I'm going to blame our profession. I don't think we do enough education, and that's what am I doing here? I'm not authorised. Evelyn, where are you? You've gone home. Let me get back into this. It's given it to me. Okay, so that's the whole idea of that material there, to help you communicate with your clients. That's client mentoring and coaching. And as you can see, there are other modules there. If you've got your $1 million client who you might classify as being a pretty good operator, well, why not take him through that level 3 and really, because that's bringing in business plans, it's bringing in budgets and cash flows and corporate governance. And it might might encouraging him or her to say, I want to be a $2 million company. Now, if they go to that, part of the package would be, well, we need to do, now you're going to be on monthly accounting, and we should be having a board of advice meeting. And in our material, there's some material on what's a board of advice. So you can just send that to the client. So you're educating the client all along the way. Because have you got a husband? You're married?
Yes.
Okay, how? Because I know this happens in my situation with my wife. My wife would go and see someone at times. She used to run a business. She's only sold it a year or so ago. They rent her and a partner in that business, another lady, ran it for 26 years. They'd go and talk to some people at times, lawyers or whatever else, and they'd come back and she'd be trying to give me the story. I said, "Are you sure that's what he said?" "Oh, I don't know." I said, "Get onto them and tell them to send you a letter, send you an email. They should have given you some document on what they were talking about." This is to do with new leases and disputes with landlords and all sorts of things over the years. Her mother had some she's passed on there, but she had some bad eyes and had to go and see an eye specialist. And she come on, she said to me, "I didn't understand a word he was saying, but I got cataracts and I got something else and I got to get this done, but I don't understand." So my wife's having a go at her and said, "Mum, you got to listen to these things." She said, "I can't listen. He talks too fast. He's a specialist. Why didn't you ask him?" "Oh, no. You can't ask a specialist," what he just said. Coincidentally, 3 weeks later, that specialist rang me. He wanted a business plan. I knew he found him in chair. I said, "You're so-and-so." I knew who he was. I just checked. So I went out to see him. I said, "What do you want a business plan for?" He said, "Well, for years there's only been 2 eye specialists in Townsville. There's now another one coming, and I hear there's another guy going to fly in from New Zealand. He's flying in and out of Australia to New Zealand in a private plane to be an eye specialist in Townsville." Must have been. So he said, "I think I've got to gear up. I've had a look, and this other guy's got a website." And he said, "I haven't got any of this." And I said, "You know what? The first thing I think you should produce is just let me ignore that. That's my secretary down in down the road. Yeah, she's knocking off. So she's going where she's going. I said to him, "Why don't you produce some diagrams, a little brochure that when you're talking to a patient, you might have a few of these, and if you're talking about a cataract or you're talking about some other thing or whatever, you've got a brochure you can give to the patient. So when they leave, they've got some notes they can take home. They can sit down and explain to their daughter or their husband or their partner or whoever, their GP, if in some cases, what you have just said to them." "Oh, yeah, that's a good idea." Well, this guy, he started producing videos. He did all sorts of things, but he never thought of that. And I said, "You're going into a competitive situation." Now, I was amazed how specialists reacted. But there's now about 7 of these different eye specialists in Townsville. And the one I go to, I notice he's got all this stuff. Now, he was never my client, and he wasn't here in that era. Maybe they teach it now at uni or their colleges. But I think every business has got to be able to market itself. Now we come back to poor old accountants. It's the reason I'm stressing to you that a lot of this material I think you should be using in a marketing sense.
Yeah, I hadn't actually even thought of that. Okay. Have you got anything on pharmacies?
Yeah, we have. I'll go to pharmacies in a moment in our business health check.
Yeah, sorry,
I'll go into there in a moment.
Yeah.
Okay, I've gone to members alert just to tell you you will be getting this tomorrow. We send out what we call a members alert to our subscribers each month. You get a bit of a video, but it's only going to our subscribers, and it's really a bit of a coach's halftime talk, if you like, in a football sense. What are we doing right, lads? What do we need to improve? Type thing. So crowdsource funding is the flavour of the month. So we've been talking about it and giving an update to our subscribers. So you'll get that, and we've gone into more detail in the January one, and in particular concentrating on what type of businesses these people are operating. There's already been $13 million raised by crowdsource funding. My general question.
I was reading about a microbrewery on the Gold Coast that just raised money.
Yeah, they're in the list.
Crowdfunding. Yeah.
In fact, there's about 4 or 5 brewery, wine, or gin manufacturers all having either raised or attempting to raise capital, because obviously craft beer and craft wine is becoming a growth business. and
Yes,
exciting business
and
with a lot of young people involved.
quite capital intensive, I'd imagine, all the equipment.
I've never.
Yeah.
All I've done is read about them and drink some of their products. But
Yeah.
so we
Okay.
also have an update on. We have a corporate governance network we've been running. It hasn't been as successful as I hoped, but there's a summary there because we've been keeping our subscribers informed of how that's going. That's targeted at the business market. For years, I've been having a go about debtors' days outstanding, and now the Prime Minister said he's going to try to force big businesses to pay within 20 days. Otherwise, they're not going to get government contracts.
Yes, so I hear.
All he's got to do is make sure he gets re-elected so he can implement that. But
Yes.
that's another issue. The Personal Property Securities Register, we have a due diligence product package on that. And
Right.
it's now 7 years old, and that was the length of time for the original protection registrations. So it's a time to be going back to those clients who took out that registration 7 years ago to remind them that if the situation still exists with that client or that supplier, they need to re-register. There's no automatic re-registration. And I'd hate someone to have been registered for 7 years and then goes into this period where they're not covered and then something happens. That would give me a nightmare if I was their accountant. And just a reminder, I think it's an appropriate time to be going back to your clients, talking to them about undertaking a due diligence review on the PPSR, and we've got the full system in there that you can use because I hate that legislation. Personally, Business Plus is the newsletter we produce each month. Have you ever seen it?
I have.
Okay.
Yeah, I went in the other night looking for the January one, but there's only a December one.
We don't produce one in January. I find most accountants are on holidays, not interested. So in the last 10 years we've been writing it. We produced one in January. That was the year we had disasters all over Australia, and a whole range of new disaster grants were released by the federal government. So we released one then.
Right.
I like to have
2011, huh?
Was that what it was? Yeah. I like to have a couple of weeks off over Christmas, New Year. So no, we don't write one then.
Okay.
What we do though is write it every month from now on. So the next edition is in February, and that will be on. We'll be releasing that on the 8th of February, Friday the 8th. So it's released on the second Friday of a month at 12 noon Queensland time, Australian Eastern Standard Time. And you can then, and we'll show you one of those in a moment. We have an update on government grants, which we supply, which is just an ongoing list of the deadline dates. So that's for Australia, but also you can then log on to individual, states and territories to get that. So that's just bringing you up to speed that's there. We also have ESS Biz Briefs, and we'll move up the chain and have a look at pharmacies. This is a document some people forget what's in ESS BIZTOOLS, I've discovered. So if you want to understand what the early stage innovation companies is all about, we are progressively writing this. So there's a video and then there's a summary. So the whole idea is a partner might say, well, you haven't got staff at this stage, but look, I want you to do something on early stage innovation companies. Go and read the material. ESS has got a summary in the beginning, which will take you about 2 minutes to read. Just read that so you get a general idea what it's about. And then we're going to go, I want you to go through and look at the material in detail. It's really to alert people to what's in the system, because we've got a lot of stuff in this system and some people seem to forget what's in there at times. And it's only when they go through a webinar they say, gee, we didn't know that was in there. So that's why I've put that into the system. Okay, let's go to business health. So we now go up into the product packages. And you asked me about business health. Well, you didn't ask about, but you asked me about pharmacies. So this is a document we've prepared so there's a webinar there to take you through it.
Mm-hmm.
Tells you what's in it. Now, what this is a benchmarking type process to take you through pharmacies. So this is the first product package we've looked at. So if we click onto there's always a procedure control form,
Mm-hmm.
which guides you through the process. The whole idea of this is to give you some sort of logical order to utilize the material. So the first, and these all vary, some have a lot more sections than this one, but there's the quotation and proposal. When we first started writing these product packages, we had people saying to us, should we write a proposal? That's why we put proposals into the system, and then we threw a format to do quotations. So they're in there. You can look at those. There's a bit of a preamble work, and there's information then you want from the client. So what we've put into this is to do a pharmacy review. Didn't seem to want to work, but it will now. Oh, okay. So this is not really what I thought I was getting then. This is what we're going to need from the client to do this. So we need the trading and profit and loss account balance sheet. No, it's not really earth-shattering stuff. That's just a list of what we're going to require.
Right.
Oh, okay. Here's what I really thought I was getting. Okay, so this is the form that will assist you to identify what information we need from the client to do a business health check on a pharmacy. So this is the instructions. So you can look at this. And then we have what we call the worksheet. So what we're trying to get from the client, and some firms are sending this to the client to partially complete. First of all, we want to understand how many days they were open, and was there any reasons why they weren't open on certain days. What information have they got? Do they know the number of visitors? Do they know the visitors to their store? How many customers or patients did they get, whatever they want to call them? Prescriptions, internet sales. So this is a record of what their system's telling them. And we did this for an actual pharmacy group, and they wanted to know where their people were. They wanted to know the top 10 postcodes of people coming to them. And we also wanted to know where when they were asking people at the front periodically what brought them to them. So they were recording it. How many people said they heard them on the radio or on Yellow Pages or whatever. We recorded the number of complaints, suggestions. So this was all a numbers type area to there. And how many phantom customer reports did we get? This particular pharmacy group had about four or five pharmacies. So they were actually having phantom customers going around and getting reports back. Then we analysed the sales, cash sales, internet, Medicare, So they got all this information. Okay. The sales dissection, what were they selling under various categories? And then we analysed the gross profit area and so on. What with all that was then put together in was there's an instructions then in 501, but I'll show you the. So in 501, this was the report that come back, because we were, by putting it all together, the system will calculate these type of things. There's all formulas built in behind this. So you'll get your daily sales, daily. Is that the sort of thing you were referring to? So you could really analyze the performance of this pharmacy and compare it to previous records.
Okay.
So why don't you have a look at that some stage and let me know your feedback?
Yeah.
We haven't actually got anything on the pharmacy industry. This was trying to do a business health check in a bit more detail than a benchmarking report.
Okay. So is there, like the business health checks, are there any sort of information guides as to the types of issues that different industries should look at? Or is it straight out analysing? Yeah.
We really haven't got too much on different industries. Not a bad idea, but we have some we haven't got pharmacies in that. This is all I think we've directly got on pharmacies. Within the system, there are some materials on trade businesses and manufacturing businesses, which do go into some of the retail businesses, retail food, retail non-food. There's probably no reason we haven't got anything on pharmacy, but we haven't at this stage. I'll just make a note about that. Question mark. Okay.
Yeah, it's quite a specialised area, I believe, and I've picked up a good client in that industry, and from his feedback, he's had other accountants who didn't sort of understand the pharmacy industry. So.
Yeah, I've acted for a few pharmacies over the years. Yeah, there are some differences, and it's now a very competitive industry.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, I want to show you the Business Plus newsletter, just so you understand how that's been put together. Have you had a look at crowdsource funding material?
No, not in any great depth.
I'll show you that also, so you get an idea. We're up to issue 164 in Business Plus newsletter.
Yeah.
So we'll just bring that up. Okay, so the main thing I'm looking for at this stage is the actual newsletter. I'll show you what those other items are there in a moment. So when you get the newsletter, it's going to have some badging that we've put on it. You remove that and put your own in there. The only reason we got that on there is we send if you had staff, we'd be saying to you, do you want material sent to all your team? So we end up with a whole stack of email addresses. And when we send this material out, Business Plus, we basically, if a firm's got 20 staff, we send it to their 20 staff so that they're kept informed. That way, that overcomes a problem that occurs in some larger firms, in that someone subscribes to this product and then they seem to keep it to themselves. They don't really share it around, and it can cause some friction, I've discovered. Nearly caused a fight one day at a seminar that I just finished speaking and on all this, And I was sitting next to a guy, and I thought, I'm sure he's one of our subscribers, but he hadn't said anything. I thought, oh, no, he mustn't be. And but his partner, we were in a horseshoe type shape, and his partner was on the other side, and he come round, and he's talking to his partner, but also looking at me and saying, I think this is good. I think we should get this. And I could feel the guy next to, I could sense he was going red in the face. And I looked at him and I thought, oh, geez, I think I'm right. He is a subscriber. Well, he was.
Yeah.
And the other guy grabbed him and said, you've been hiding. And he was the admin partner, the guy next to me. And he'd obviously paid for this. And then I got the story. The guy next to me was turning up on a Monday morning, making out that he'd done all the work on these articles over the weekend.
Oh, so no, right.
The older guy was not impressed, I can tell you. So that's when I decided we would try to broaden who got hold of some of the material. Not every firm does that. Some just want it to go to one person, but we can only offer.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, so we don't fill this up with taxation articles because SMEs tell me they don't want taxation articles. That's for the accountant to read. This is our taxation article for this month, actually, something about the Australian Business Growth Fund, because that's all that our tax writer come up with. Our tax writer works for my son, the firm my son's with in Townsville, and writes for the Institute of Tax Institute, as well as the Institute of Chartered Accountants. I keep on telling him, though, we got to tone it down. This is not for accountants. This is for SMEs. They've got to understand it.
That's right.
Kate Carmel, the Small Business Ombudsman, had released an article saying that 26% of SME loans were funded by parents and grandparents. She called them the bank of mum and dad. Financial Review ran an article on it. And I thought that's a good idea to talk about because that could open the door for crowdsourced funding. The parents have lent them a few $100,000 and they're now wanting to retire or go into a nursing home or whatever. They need the money back. Where's the money going to come from? The business has probably got no assets to secure to a bank. Banks are going to be, I think, very difficult to deal with over the next few years in the aftermath of this Royal Commission.
For certain.
And crowdsourced funding could be an option. I'm just posing. And at the end of every segment, we normally finish with a call to action. If you want to discuss this with us, come and talk to us because, we're here to help you in effect. We given them an update on crowdsourced funding, and in February there's going to be more on crowdsourced funding because I've now got details of the industries some of these companies that have raised money are from, and I think that's very informative information for not only accountants but also for the SMEs. The government's announced they're going to change the thresholds for large proprietary companies from July 1. It's not law yet, but it hasn't been regulated yet. They put it up for some sort of discussion, but that's what they want to do.
I haven't got any of those.
Are you monitoring? You haven't got any of those large proprietary? I read how many there were, a couple of thousand or something. So there's some big proprietary companies out there. The PPSR, we just talked about it, and this is meant to be reminding them. And we've got an article there saying there's been 10 million registrations according to the PPSR, and that's what they covered. And really it's there to say, does this remind you as an SME that perhaps you should be doing something about this? Over the years, I've written a lot of articles on the PPSR, but it doesn't mean that everyone remembers them, so we do bring some of them back, especially the 450 million that's cost businesses because they didn't register. I couldn't help but report that the Prime Minister is going to tell big business to pay promptly. I think that's wonderful. The good and bad news, this is an economic update. That's basically Professor Neville Norman's comments. He writes, he's one of the guys on Business Essentials. I've been subscribing to that for 27 years. I found him a very accurate forecaster, to be honest, over the years. Used to be Michael Schulberger's business, if you remember him. Schulberger's passed on now, but Neville Norman's been their economic commentary person for 33 years. I think the whole time it's been running. It was him and Neville, Michael Schulberger started it. And then something about customers. And at the end of all that, we've got attention accountants. Now, the whole idea of that is we try to give some details of some supplementary information that you might be interested in to back up your knowledge on a particular subject. It all came about because someone rang me one day and said, "Thanks for the newsletter. It's great, Pete. Pity I hadn't read it before I sent it out." I said, "Why? What was the problem?" I'm thinking we've made a mistake. That's what I'm thinking. And he said, "Well, you had something in there about export market development grant." He said, "I got no idea what that is, or I didn't." But two of my clients read it and rang me straight away.
Oh, no.
And I said to one of them, "I don't know anything about that." And he said, "It's in your newsletter." So
oh, no.
he said, I had to eat humble pie.
Right.
And I said, "Okay, how about we do this? If we do something like that again, and there's something in ESS BizTools that relates to that, we'll put it into this attention accountants." So that's the reason it's there.
Okay.
Because people do ask me, they say, "What do we got that in here for?" Well, that's the reason. I suggest that you get rid of that.
Do you leave that in there?
No, I take that out.
Okay.
And before you send it to your clients, and you might put in there that you're going to have a seminar or a webinar that one of your clients won Business of the Year, or there's a field day on it somewhere near. I can't think of any place outside of Toowoomba at present, but there's a field day on in a couple of weeks' time at Goondiwindi or Reddit. And just what some people do, mainly in the country areas, is they do add some material to this because there are things like field days and other activities that they want to promote, or the DPI might have put out an urgent sort of warning about a weed or something, and they want it communicated. So you can add material to it. Is what I'm trying to say, and hopefully that warning that perhaps you should read our articles on crowdsourced funding before you start sending this out and getting an excited client. And you really don't know anything about it. We don't want to embarrass people. And obviously, at the end, you remove our logo again and put your own in.
So can I put that into like a MailChimp template?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Look, our newsletter appears all over the place. I read it sometimes 10 or 15 different times on the internet because people are putting it out. That's all right. That's the whole idea. It's there to promote. It hasn't got our name.
Can you use it in like a Facebook post? Yeah,
you can do that. This is a document that we want used because if people start, how do I put this? I want you to be successful. I want you to say, "I've used ESS BizTools and I've listened to what Peter Towers has got to say, and I've trebled the size or doubled the size of my firm. I've got clients that have gone from $1 million to $3 million turnover, and that part of that is you got to promote. It won't work otherwise.
Cool.
We just don't want you handing the paper. Well, you can hand the papers to your clients, of course, but we don't want you putting it. So another accountant that hasn't paid us a subscription, and you are paying a subscription, is just able to go onto onto your website and get them.
No way.
So let them pay their own fee. And but no, you can use this document to promote yourself as much as you like. And but if another accountant rings you and says, and he's down in Melbourne and says, or she says, "Oh, that looked good stuff. Where did you get that from, Carmel?" I'd like you to say ESS BizTools because it's not going to appear on it. That's the other deliberate thing. We haven't branded this one.
Oh, right.
ESS BizTools. Because we are saying
so if I use one of those. Okay, so if I use one of those stories on like a Facebook post or something, do I need to give credit to you?
No, I wouldn't worry about that.
Okay.
No one's ever done that, as far as I know. If you want to do it, you can, but if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. Okay.
Okay. All right. Just a quick question. I know you're running out of time. Is there a separate grants?
Oh yeah. Let's
like a bulletin that comes out.
Separate bulletin. We run.
Like, how do we get updates on?
We update the grants all the time. Let me go
on the site.
Have you seen the grant website?
No, I actually haven't.
Okay, now it's a separate website. Everyone would have given you a separate registration, separate login.
I guess
so I'm on it now. I've just clicked across.
Right.
You've got to log in, but I've obviously got an automatic one. There's an explanation on the terminology that's in it. So what we have done, we have looked at hundreds of grants. federal, state and territory. We are going to introduce local government. It won't apply to you in Toowoomba. It doesn't apply anywhere in Queensland, I don't think. But in some, mainly Victoria, a couple of councils in New South Wales and in Western Australia, there are local governments giving grants to business. It's mainly to locate into the CBD areas. So but in Melbourne, it's obviously become very competitive. So you can get the same sort of grant if you're down in some of those southeast suburban council areas in Melbourne, going down in the Port Phillip Bay and all that area. They offer grants. You can get $50,000 grant if you open a business in the CBD of Melbourne, as long as you're in business for over a year, and you're a small business. So it's we're just trying to pin.
So can you put details of grants in the newsletter?
Sorry, I missed the first part of that.
Oh, if there's a particular grant that I'd like to show the clients, can I include that in the newsletter?
Oh, if you wish, yeah. We do write about grants in the newsletters. There's going to be an article on the accelerating commercialisation in the February issue. It's $1 million grant. It's the biggest in the system at present.
Okay.
So what we do on grants, we run a members webinar each month. So in the members alert, when you get that tomorrow, it's got details of a free webinar towards the end of February, and the next one of those will be on grants. So we alternated a bit and talk about grants to try to get people comfort in using this system and accepting that grants are a gateway to business advisory services, in my opinion. So this is what I've called a test client. I've used this probably a dozen times. I'm going to have to get a new one because I'm running out of good ideas on this, which I'll show you in a moment. But the first thing you need to do is to decide what the entity of the client. So this is a profile you've got to complete for your individual client. You don't only do it for a business client, but you need to identify which category they fall into. Companies are the most popular for grants, but you can get grants for all these other types of things. We want to know whether they export goods or services. And remember, services could be an Australian resort or a whitewater rafting business. They're exporting. So don't forget them because they fall under the Export Market Development Grant. Do you import? So if you've got businesses promoting farm stay type activities on the Darling Downs and flying into that wonderful new airport, which I haven't been to yet, but I've heard a lot about.
It's good.
So the Wagner family built. That's potentially that's an export income they're earning. They can claim the Export Market Development Grant. A lot of people forget that. We want to know how many employees they've got, and we need to put them into bands. They're the common bands that the grants have got. They've got to have an ABN. They won't get a grant unless they've got it. We want to know how many years they've been in business, and they're the bands that are used for years. 15 years ago, most grants were pitched at startups. Today, most grants are pitched at businesses over 3 years of age. The governments have woken, even though there's still some, and a very big one is there for a startup, but it's a startup that's already developed a whole stack of technology, really. That's the accelerating commercialisation. Governments have realised that a lot of businesses do fail in the first 3 years, and they've decided they're not going to waste their grant money. They are really trying to pick winners, especially Oz Industry. Oz Industry doesn't promote all their grants. And incidentally, on grants, I would be making myself known to the Oz Industry representative in Toowoomba, if I was you, and I'd be making myself known to the state government grant people. So that's really the Queensland Department of, I forget, what's it called now? I'll get Evelyn to send you to the details.
Thanks.
What their titles are. They're well worth talking to. Let me make a note of that. State Development Grants Toowoomba officer. officers. Now, there might be a few of them. Oz Industries, there's probably only one, but Oz Industries has got some big grants that sit above that, like the Accelerating Commercialisation. And I think there is someone in Toowoomba in that. Actually, there's 32 of them around Australia. And I was in the earlier program called Comet years ago that I mentioned before. Okay, so the annual turnover is important. They're the turnover bands that come into grants. So what I mean by that, 20 million, there's a change in how research and development's treated. So we have different information contained if the client's got a turnover over $20 million. Obviously, they're not getting the same R&D rebate. So that's the Export Market Development Grant cuts out at $50 million turnover. So that's why the turnovers are so important. There's some other grants that only apply once you've got over you've got to be over $1.5 million in size. So that's why $1.5 million is important, and so on. Are they registered for GST? They've got to be. Are they tax exempt? They really need to be answering no for 99.9% of the grants in this system. There are a couple that, because a couple of state governments have let grants go through now that tax exempt businesses can apply, or tax exempt organisations, not businesses. And we want to know whether they're doing R&D, not relating to whether they're a company and spending more than 20 grand a year, therefore they can get the R&D rebate. In our reasoning in the back end for some of the grants, we're saying if you're doing R&D, well, you might be eligible for this other grant, which might be a bit obscure. So it's nothing to do with, so a sole trader can quite easily tick that R&D. In fact, a lot of the R&D is done in Australia by sole traders. They don't realise that they should be companies if they want to get the rebate. Okay, so we then go into this. So that's the initial information that's in the cloud, so you don't have to redo it each year. You can just update it. We'll take the original entry takes 3 to 4 minutes. Updates should only take 20 seconds, I think. Once you put the postcode in, it decides what region you're in. Every business in every area of Australia comes under a region, and some of the regions have got grant benefits. So it will tell you tells us what they are. It's not really being told to you. It's being told to our back end so that it can decide on the grants. The business industry code is the next big question. That is normally the code you've got on the client's tax return, but it can be different. The government do not compare. No one takes any notice within anyone handling out grants. They're not worried what you tell the tax office. They don't particularly like the tax office, most of them. But where it can be a trap is if the if the business activities have changed. So I found one recently. I had a look at an application. The turnover was $8.5 million. They were in fact an animal food manufacturing business. They were dealing with grain and wheat and everything else, and making feed for cattle and horses and pigs. And an accountant or a business broker actually rang me, and he'd been referred to me by an accountant, and I said, yeah, I'll have a look at it for you. And we put it through because the accountant said we can't find any grants, and they weren't using our system. They just couldn't find any grants. When I looked at it, I come to the same conclusion. I could find 4 grants. And then I looked at this code, and it was saying the business was a wholesaler. And I thought that broker told me they were manufacturing animal food products. So I rang the broker, and he said, I think that's what they do. Here's the client's number. Why don't you ring them? So I rang the client, told him who I was, and I don't think he even knew that it had been referred to me, to be honest. And I said, what do you do? And he told me he manufactured. I said, why would your accountant be calling you a wholesaler? He said, that's what I was 26 years ago when I started this business. But then I bought a mill and I did this. I said, well, okay, we're now going to change this. So we put the code in for a mill, manufacturing processing, and we went to 33 grants. So it's important to make sure that it's up to date. You can have as many, well, I say as many codes as you like. The maximum I've ever seen was 25. Someone put 25 in. They must have had a very diversified business if they had that many different codes. But obviously, we've linked what the industry codes are for grants. We've gone through and done that for the month of Sundays when we first did it. It's a lot easier now because it's only getting done on individual grants. So you're now ready to search the grants. So you click search grants.
Yep.
Now we've already got one in an eligible grant. We've got 14 in partially, so that's 15, and we got 14 there. So we originally had 29 turned up in pending grants because that's where they originally are. And just to give you an idea, whatever it is, certain inputs to manufacturing, this is for a manufacturer. You get a description. That's a bit brief, that one, but because that's probably all we had. Some of them might go on for a page, trying to explain to you what this grant's about. You say, okay, what's the funding? And the client gets a duty-free entry of eligible goods. So this is for importers, right? And so I'm just giving. So we then say, okay, we want to read more about that. So you click on the paper, and you can read more details about how this particular benefit applies. How do you get rid of the import duties? Okay. And we say, okay, that's great. Now then what we've got for you to help you is to do the application. So we are assuming accountants are doing this. So we've got name, we've got times or units, and Evelyn has gone through and broken this down. She's done all, I showed her how to do one, and she's done hundreds of others, is breaking down what information's got to be disclosed. So that you get an idea what's involved in doing a grant application. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's all there. Yep. And then we say...
I was CEO of a non-profit for a couple of years, and so I know about grants, what's involved. It's pretty intensive.
We haven't got non-profits in this system. We've been thinking about it, but we haven't put them in. Now, there's then some additional questions. Quite frankly, these ones give us enough headaches. I think not-for-profits, charities and all that would be very complicated because you've got philanthropic organisations involved. You've got governments, but you've also got a whole range of non-governments that are involved. And where you, it's not easy, but there's a methodology for looking at it from a government point of view, whether it's state or federal. But when you start getting all sorts of other organisations, I think it gets very difficult. Okay, so we've got some additional criteria. Does the business import raw material under that? We'll just say yeah for the sake of this demonstration. Will the application be lodged before the goods are imported? I think they are. Will the imported goods demonstrate a substantial performance advantage in Australia? We say yes. And will the goods subject to the application generate a quantifiable and significant benefit for Australia? You can see the bureaucratic nonsense coming out in some of these, can't you?
Yes.
But that's what the rules say. Now, what that did, when I put the last answer in, which the system's saying, well, the tick was the correct answer, but no can be the correct answer. There's probably about 15% of the answers knows the correct answer. But what it did was bring up apply now. If you click that, that will take you to the appropriate government website. But what I want to show you is the close. Now let's go back and change one of these. We'll answer no. Let's put a cross behind it. It took that away. And if I go back in to the system now and we say, and I know where it is, it's in potentially ineligible, and there's that particular grant. If we said, oh, no, we must have answered that wrong, we think they would have been right. It's just a matter of going back in, changing it back to yes, and the system will allow you to do it. So it's meant to be a system that you're working with. So let's go in here. We've now got, we now have a look at the potentially eligibles because that's where it's been putting them. So that's where we're going to get the report. It's going to be based on these potentially eligibles, not on the ones that are left in pending. They can stay there. You don't have to get rid of them. So we're going to print the report. So here's the report. It's got the name of your client. It's going to have your name there, Quantify Accounting Solutions, the date. It gives you a brief executive type summary on what the grant's about, and what the funding for it is, $5,000 to $1 million in grant funds. Some apprenticeship incentives. The fine print says you've got to apply for it. Don't go out and think you're going to spend the money tomorrow. You've got to go through an application process, and so it goes on. So the whole concept of this, Carmel, is that I think this sort of work can be done on an ad hoc basis to show to a client that you're proactive and you can help them, or it can be done as part of the annual financial accounts, is what I recommend to people they do.
All right.
So that when the client comes in, or you go to them, or you have a discussion about their financial performance of the year, you can then in a very proactive manner say, look, I now want to talk to you about this. I've identified that you could be eligible to apply for, what's this one saying, 15 grants. Oh, okay. Because one of the things that seems to really upset SMEs is if they find out one of their competitors got a grant that they didn't know anything about. And when I talk to SMEs, they say, why didn't my accountant tell me about that? Why indeed, I think, but I never say that. So if they used our product, you could do it. At other times, you might do this at the end of the financial year when you mightn't be as busy, but you're a sole trader. I'd be doing it with the annual reports as such. Unless you hear on the grapevine, you might read in the newspaper that XYZ is a very similar business to one or more of your clients has got a government grant. You might say, geez, I'm going to put them through this system now. And I think the system will probably tell you that those clients are entitled to a grant. So you get on the phone or on the email and say, hey, I've identified the grant for you.
Okay.
So when the client's sitting in front of you, the first response for most of the clients is going to be, that's great, thanks for telling us. If you've got clients who hate the government, literally hate them, don't want anything to do with anyone, I wouldn't even do this for them. I've struck a couple of those. In fact, I had one in a government grant program, and I was able to get them expelled. I wish I hadn't, because the paper war that followed was unbelievable. But I contacted Canberra and saying, this client's telling me fibs. In fact, he was telling me outright lies, but I thought I'd better be careful what I tell them, because they were typing it all down, and it was obviously going to end up in some sort of report. And he seemed to have cleared off to the Philippines and wasn't coming back. And so it went on and on. And his co-director, who was the manager of a business incubator, he was getting nervous because he said, this guy's been disappearing. He's disappeared for 4 months. And I thought, why should the taxpayer be giving this guy money to do things? He'd sent a message back to me just to go ahead and appoint a consultant to do a business plan. And I contacted him and said, no way in the world. The consultant's got to interview you. I'm not having Mickey Mouse business plans prepared. And that's not going to help you raise capital, because that was the whole idea of that program. And you're going to be here. And if you're not here, we're not going to process this. Then I ran into the other guy. It was the director, and he said, he's been gone for 4 months. I've had him. I said, okay, have we spent any of the money yet? Because the government gives advance money for a lot of grants, and they've been in advance. Where's the advance money? It was still in the bank account. I said, okay, let's write a check. We're going to transfer the money back to Canberra. Well, that started the requirement for about 10 reports. But anyhow, we got it all through.
Yeah.
And
so have you got consultants that actually write grants?
Accountants, you mean? Some of them do. Utilise our system.
Do they?
I write grants. Grants, grant applications.
Yes.
Yeah. What you can then do is, so you've talked to the client. Yeah, okay. That's the next thing that happens. Who's going to do the grant application? Now, in most cases, he's going to look at you and say, okay, Carmel, will you do the grant application? My suggestion is, if you're going to do it, you say yes, but we're going to bill you separately. It's got nothing to do with our other work. or you can say, yeah, I know, I can refer you to someone that will do that if you want.
Right.
Now, we do it. We've decided to do some of that work because some of our accountants are saying we're too busy. We're happy to go. We're happy to go to this stage, Peter, but we don't want to do the applications.
Yeah, I'm a bit like that.
Okay, and I can understand that with a one-person firm, I get a bit I query when they've got 20 or 30 staff on their team why they can't do the grant applications, to be honest. But we will do it. We charge a fee, and if you're interested in all that, let us know, and we'll send you the information.
Good.
Because
good to know.
The thing that then follows with a grant is once they get it, there is at times significant work that accountants can do, and that becomes a bit of a debating point. At times I say to the accountant, well, if you're not having to do with this, I'm now dealing with your client. I'm not going to do anything to white ant you, but if there's a business plan that comes out of that, I'm going to put a proposal in. And that most of them will say, yeah, well, we don't want to do it. I say, okay, right, if you don't want to do it. But obviously, I would talk to you about that. And if you said, oh, I'd like to do this, and that other work, I'm going to put a proposal in. We're not going to go against you as one of our subscribers. But I've had a couple of people come to us who aren't even in our syndicate, aren't even in our membership. And I've said, okay, I'll do that. But if any other work comes out of it, we're going to submit it to the client. Now, the client's the final boss. The client might say, no, I want my accountant to do that. The ones we've done so far, the accountant just stood on the sidelines. And I met the accountant and he said, look, I'm too busy. There's a guy in Brisbane. I'm too busy. I'm flat out. This client is a very high consumption client, uses up a lot of my spare energy because he rings me on weekends and everything else. I really don't want to go down a government grant application because the application was for a lot of money. And I said, okay, so we did it. And okay, so that's grants. Right. That give you anything to think about?
Yes, lots. Yes, okay.
Now the process from here in what we do, Carmel, is we will do another workshop like this in another webinar for about an hour in about 2 or 3 months. If you've got any questions in the meantime, give me a buzz because we want you to fully appreciating. I just realised I had forgotten something, so I'm just going to go back into the system. If you've got another 2 minutes, I have another webinar to do in a minute over in Perth. So if my note tells me correctly. And I'm going to be hoarse because you're the third one today. So by the end of the night.
Right.
Is this helping you?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so this way of just going through it, just moving around. Okay,
that's fine.
Good. Okay, what I just want to show you where it is, so and suggest you have a look at it, is what we call, and I've got to change those logins because these computers have all been set up for development work and you don't want to see any of the development work. There's red lines going everywhere. What's all that? Okay, what I would suggest you look at is Business Advisory Services Introduction. I really didn't check the sheet as I was going through. So there is a webinar there you can watch. Now, this is the material that I always suggest to people to start with because it takes you through the methodology as to what we're trying to achieve here. I must admit it is written for firms, so you've normally got partners and managers and accountancy staff. Some firms have got marketing people, and obviously there's always some admin people. But it's to guide you through the process. And what I normally say to people is allow an hour for each of these modules. So do this over, say, once a week over a 3-month period. to go through and look at everything. Now, you might just glance through some of these items, so that what you're going to find is when you log on, you've got that procedure control form that I mentioned before, and it's going to guide you through the process.
Right.
It's probably more applicable to firms that are trying to get some of their younger accountants involved in this area, but it's still, I think, very worthwhile for you to read and click onto the various forms and articles so that you get a general all-round view of what we're trying to do. And we've used some of the comments. I went to 2 or 3 David Maister workshops when he toured Australia a couple of times. I found him very interesting. He was from Harvard, and very practical writer, and has written quite a number of books for accountants. And I've mentioned Andrew Geddes before, so we use a lot of. I've been to their workshops over the years and have developed a lot of my ideas based on their processes. So I'd suggest that you utilize that to give you a guide through. And just the one other thing I'm going to show you at this stage, and then I've got to go, and I'm sure you have, is the SME needs analysis. This is a separate section within this area, but it also comes up here because it gets mentioned in this first module, and so it's just suggesting that you have a look at it. I think we've got to get clients to tell us what they want. And part of that is you educate them on what you can do beyond taxation, as I said a few times. So
and this is talk to us before they go and do something.
Yeah. And the way you do that is you embed yourself as their CFO. Because in a public company, it's very rare for the CEO to go off and do something unless he's talked to his CFO and probably their and other people in the management team. Now they work together in teams. They understand they've got a team. They know they can't do everything themselves. But your poor old SME has got the same problems, but he's got no one to help. He or she's got no one to help them. And the way you embed in that, I think, is making yourself available, being going that extra inch, if you like, asking more questions, and they will then contact you. Now, you might get a bit sick of it after a while because they'll ring you. Someone, well, mainly it was when I was in a public company, very ungodly hours. My boss used to ring at 3 a.m. sometimes. And then
mine are fairly well educated.
He'd be overseas and say, "Oh, is it that time in Australia, Pete?" I said, "Yes, Jeffrey." But the whole idea of this document is to encourage your client to tell you what they want you to talk to them about.
All right.
So they might look at this. So you give them this, and they look at it and say, "What are my key performance indicators? Should I have them? What's the source and application of funds? And, what's my debtors days outstanding? I got no idea. What's debtors financing and factoring mean? And what all this sort of questioning is going to give." So our system takes you through this process when you go through these 12 modules that I just referred to. And this is part of it then, that you then talk to the client and say, "Now, I want you to go through and look at this document and I'll come back and talk to you in a week's time." Are they worried about any of these issues? Have they got some human resources issues? They need some employment agreements.
Well, I was just going to ask that. Do you have much information on employee obligations?
We got some articles, but we also are linked up with a colleague who runs a business called Blackstone Business Group, and we have these products available on our website.
It's a separate product.
But within what you're subscribed for, there are articles on human resources. There's a whole section on human resources.
Okay.
We don't have a separate product package. We then talk about competitors. They need some analysis done on their competitors. I've done a number of reviews on competitors. Normally in a city, someone wanted to know various things on competitors in Cairns once, so we did a review on them. And a lot of it was all in the public domain. It was just a matter of looking. Amazing what you can get off the internet, off websites.
Yes.
Business modelling. Do they need some? If you tweak what you're offering your clients, could you get a 6% increase in visitations? Could you get the average sale price up by 4% and change the gross profit by 0.3%? What's that mean to your bottom line? It can add up to a lot of money at times. What about corporate governance? Are they thinking about trying to raise capital as crowdsource funding? Most companies will need for their board to upgrade their director skills because suddenly they're in a virtual public company environment. They're going to get asked some tough questions by the intermediaries, and they should have some external directors coming onto their boards who are going to be more educated. And a lot of people don't like being outshone in their own company. Government grants we've just talked about. Would they like to know more about grants? Personal property securities register. Are they registering? R&D. Are they doing something and they're not in a company? Are they exporting? Are they getting the export market development grant? Or are they servicing overseas visitors to Australia? Remember I mentioned that before, offering direct services to overseas. Yeah. Are they in the tourist industry that's relying? So are they marketing in China, in Japan, and USA, and Germany or somewhere? Where obviously a lot of their tourists. Do they want you to look at their costs? What risks have they got? Do they want to now raise capital as crowdsource funding or early stage innovation? So do they need a business plan? If you gave that to your clients, what do you think you'd get back? Stack of work?
Yes.
I think
how do you price it?
Well, how you price it is then sit down and do a proposal. And each of our product packages got a quotation sheet to guide you through.
Okay.
Obviously, you've got to estimate how long you're going to spend on something. Now, you've got to give and take a bit on consultancy. And at first, you might significantly underquote. Well, that's all right. Unless it's a huge job, it's not going to financially wreck you. It's part of a learning curve.
Yeah.
And you get a gut feeling after a while as to how quick you're going to do something. It is easy to get diverted in some of the consultancy assignments. I must admit that. And that's why all of our proposals include a very important clause. If you require us to do any other work during this assignment, we will submit a separate proposal and cost estimate to you. Very important. You don't get caught with the client adding another 10 things on. Just like the builder. You're building your house or doing renovations. Someone's not adding, now will you paint the roof while you're here? All these types of things. And they don't go home and do an extra quote for you. And then you say, oh, no, I thought all that was in the deal. I'm not going to pay you an extra $10,000 or whatever. And then we start looking at some of the futuristic things. What this document, SME Needs Analysis, is trying to get a feedback from the client as to what they think their needs are. What are they interested in?
Okay.
Think about it, Carmel, and good luck. And if you've got any questions, if you've got any, I do offer consulting services. So if you've got a client that we talked about this before, that you're a bit uneasy about doing something for, especially at this early stage of all this, I'm quite happy for you to ring me. I'll talk to you about it. I'll understand it. I'm happy then to participate in a three-way conversation with the client. No fee on any of that. I then decide whether I can do anything. Obviously, the client's got to decide if he likes my voice and my face, sort of thing. And we can then give a proposal. And we could work together. But that's your call. If you need assistance, sing out.
Thank you very much.
Welcome aboard. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a great day.
Peter.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.